Alrighty, this is just We People News. One more time at it, okay? What's my motto? Never look just straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. So if you want to check out more of his videos, get over there. Subscribe, okay? He does got a lot of good contact. Alright? And he's got a web channel. I don't know what it is at the present time. And, but I piece this little piece here because we've talked about it off and on through my channel, and I keep saying that judges end up making themselves kings here in Texas and everywhere else. All right, um, what the Supreme Court is supposed to do is put the limitations on Congress. Okay, back in 1946, I believe, may be wrong on the year, verify it. It was an administrative act, okay? And they put all of us in this administrative process. Well, administrative was actually supposed to be, allegedly, all right? Can't go in their minds, you know, attorneys got to make money. Allegedly, when these attorneys brought up the Administrative Act for Congress to pass, again, back in 1946, I believe, is supposed to be intended for the government employees. It is not supposed to apply to the people. Okay? For you Second Amendment people out there, listen to what they are doing. Government is making an administrative statute regulating businesses, let's say for the Second Amendment, to buy arms and all that. Well, since it shall not be infringed in the Second Amendment, what the government is doing by creature of the state is created a policy for the business to issue a permit, right? If you don't have a permit, you can't buy this. If you don't have it tied, you can't buy this weapon. You can't buy this. You can't buy this. But the government is not allowed to do that. They cannot instruct the creature of the state to even violate your rights. We have been so ignorant of our rights, we just assume that they can do these things, right? There's only 18 powers the Constitution is dedicated to of the federal to the state. But yet, it seems like every time you turn around, oh, it's federal this, federal this, federal this, federal this, federal this. Even in our Texas code, right, it says state means federal. Okay? So, what the founding fathers said, state means the people. So they changed it on us, y'all. But the original intent was the state meant the people. And that's what the founding fathers said. But they had to get more power a hold of our states' rights, right? And prior to the 14th Amendment, we had state rights. That's the reason why there is no such thing as U.S. citizens or United States citizens, because we had to be state citizens. Anyway, let's check out what he has to say about the three branches of government that they don't never tell you about.
God had me write this, but in this letter was it's not really legally strong as far as all of the terminology, but this was straight from my heart. And this is what I really intended to do with this judge and with Blount County. And it was basically a cry to say, look, we understand that there is a systemic issue that's going on here in family court, where our rights are being deprived, our children are being invoked by trauma that they shouldn't have to deal with. And there's no family court judge out there that's actually taking a stand to do the right thing. So my plea to her was, will you be that first judge? Will you make a national stand and basically say that, you know what, you're right? So, can I read this?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pause right here right quick. Now recognize this as well, y'all. For anybody that's involved in any type of form of federal or family court. Number one, the 4D program is contract. They're trying to get you in contract. Okay? If you make any type of agreements, you're agreeing to a contract. Okay? It's not law. Okay? There is no law saying you have to pay child support. It doesn't exist without the contract. And this is our number one problem. Number two, the opposite side is an informant and can be considered as a witness. But more than anything else, it's an informant. Your spouse, your ex-spouse, is an informant. Okay? And by the way of information. And number three, or four, or five, what happens is your attorney general in all states signs a contract with the federal government. Now your county attorney general signs a contract for the state with the attorney general. And then when you go into court, by your ignorance, you go ahead and accept the terms of agreement of child support and this, that, here, and there, because what? This alleged bad daddy thing, you know, and all that kind of stuff. All right? Men, take care of your offsprings, okay? By the way, child, okay, is a person under the age of 18. Person is defined shortly: individual, person, commerce, business, trust, contracts. All right? Now, that being said, that is a creature of one like kind that is separate from men and women and offsprings. Okay, so that needs to be cleared up.
So she mentioned earlier when I just walked upstairs, she mentioned that we can't fight in their battlefield, right? And the analogy that I want to bring up to you guys is that, you know, we all know that we're fighting English tradition, right? The Bar Association, we know what it is. There's enough evidence out there. We're not going to go through it. The British Accreditation Registry.
By the way, I believe it was 1840, around 1840, when the first licensed attorney was accepted in one state, and then it grew into these other states we know today that everybody's involved. Okay? But wait a minute. What happened before then? Well, we didn't need a bar license. We could give legal advice because I am allowed to call my dad for counsel in court. I am allowed to call my brothers. I'm allowed to call my friend that may be more knowledgeable about law than I am. I am allowed to call for a true educated counsel that's been to school for me. But the funny thing is, there is no constitutional right to an attorney. You do have a constitutional right to counsel.
We know that. Now, the big reason why English judicial philosophy has seeped its way, permeated its way here into America is that here in America, we have a separation of powers, right? We have legislative branch, creates all legislation, all legislative power. That means legislation is law. So all power to deal with law vested in branch number one. That's make, amend, or destroy law. Everything that has to do with law is done by the first branch government.
Within the guidelines of the Constitution. He doesn't say that, but it has to be within the guidelines of the Constitution.
Branch government is the executive branch. That is there to enforce the law. It's the enforcement branch, right? They don't create law, they create orders, executive orders. But orders is not law. Orders only affect those that can be ordered. So orders only affect those that are within the executive branch, the ones that the executive officer can order, right? The president can't order the people, right? Because he's a servant to the people. So executive orders, don't get it wrong. Those don't affect people. Only law affects people. Legislation is all that affects people. Third branch government is the judicial branch, right? They are there to administer the laws. They are the administrative branch. So, and they create rulings, not law. They create rulings, judicial rulings. But rulings are not law. Rulings only affect those that can be ruled over, which are administrative officers, right? Members of the administrative branch. That's why an attorney is an administrative officer of the court, because they follow administrative law, because they're ruled over by judges, right? They're administrative officers. They follow administrative law. What does that have to do with English?
And they're not allowed to give their opinion, right? They got to read the Constitution. They got to understand the Constitution and apply the Constitution the way it is intent in writing. Not making up a bunch of opinions. All right? Nowhere in the Second Amendment it says, shall not be infringed unless there's a statute, unless there's a court opinion, unless there's a ruling. Nowhere does it say that. It says cannot be infringed.
Jurisprudence. Well, this, here in America, right, we did not delegate the authority for the judicial branch to have any legislative power. Clause 1, Article 1 of the Constitution says all legislative powers vested in Congress of the United States, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. All power to make, amend, or destroy law is vested in the first branch government. No other branch government has any constituted authority to deal with law, right? So, here in America, judges do not make law. You do not legislate from the bench here in America. You do in England, right? You do in England. Because in England, you have a monarchy, right? A king. And that monarchy did delegate his legislative authority to his officers, the judges. So in England, right, in English judicial philosophy, the judges do speak the law. What a judge says in England is the law, because the monarchy has granted his agents, the judges, the authority to speak the law. That's where the bar has seeped itself in. That's where English jurisprudence has come in. That's where we have gone wrong here in America, is that judges do not create the law. So when a judge creates a ruling, right, a judicial ruling, and then goes out and calls it law, case law, that is not law. That is an unconstitutional act, because the judicial branch has no authority to create law. You cannot create law. Judges, you fucking create orders. Judges here in America are tethered to positive law. Therefore, their rulings must be consistent with positive law. So we have an absolute English monarchy or English judicial philosophy. It's permeated its way here in America, and that's the problem. Administrative law is made by judges, and administrative officers follow administrative law because that's what they're taught to do. And every one of these attorneys is an administrative officer of the court. That's why attorneys tell you to follow case law. That's not law. That's why they can't even grasp this, because they've been taught English judicial philosophy contrary to American judicial philosophy. Judges don't create law. So the reason why I say this is that we know what we're fighting. We're fighting the British all over again. So let's go ahead and take a look at history, right? Because if you want to predict the future, all you got to do is study the past.
By the way, that was byproduct of the 1812 war. Kings still thought they had authority over us. So they came in again. Now, courthouses got burned down, this, that, here, and there. Well, they was losing records. They was burning records down, right? So we didn't get the true copy of the original intent on a lot of cases. All right? White House burned down, all court buildings, all that, right? To gain notoriety to be an attorney by thereby license. Now, recognize the bar is a private, basically corporation. It is still form of the creature of the state, but the state end up learning how to bow down to the almighty God bar. All right, we can't do nothing without, disturbing legal advice. Well, what did we do before 1840? People? Jesus Christ.
How did our founders and forefathers, how did they fight a war against the greatest military force known to mankind, a military force that had never lost on the battlefield? How did our founders and forefathers fight them with essentially pitchfork? They fought them asymmetrically, right? You did not meet them on superior military force. They knew it. They couldn't meet them out in the open. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. I'm not going to go into their battlefield. I'm not going to go into their courtroom. I'm going to fight them everywhere outside of that courtroom, right? We're going to go to city hall meetings. We're going to go to commissioner meetings. We're going to serve them in their office. We're going to come to their doorstep, right? We're going to fight them asymmetrically because that's what our founders did. We're going to follow them.
Yep. And that's where notice of liability comes about, y'all. And I haven't seen his notice of liability, but eventually I'm going to go into it and look at his notice of liability. But the way he speaks to all these people, when he goes sees the towns and all that, he calls them out. You can't do this by information. It's a violation of due process. It's a violation of the Constitution. And it's a violation of almost every single state constitution. For Texas, a violation 14, 15, and 16 of the criminal codes. And, believe it or not, 543, Texas Transportation Code. It's a violation.